Humans are the only mammal that willingly covers its entire body in someone else's skin. No fur, no feathers, no natural insulation. And yet, we spread into freezing tundra, high mountains, and Arctic ice. The one thing that made that possible didn't evolve on our bodies. We had to invent it. Somewhere around 1,000,000 years ago or more, our ancestors lost most of their body hair, likely to sweat more efficiently while hunting in open, hot environments. It worked brilliantly in Africa's heat, but it left us with almost no natural protection anywhere the climate turned cold. Here's the problem. Clothing doesn't survive. Hide and woven fiber rot away within decades, leaving essentially nothing behind for archaeologists to find directly. So how do scientists even begin to answer a question about something that basically never fossilizes? The answer came from somewhere almost nobody expected: lice. Human head lice and human body lice are genetically distinct species, and body lice can only survive in clothing, not directly on skin. By comparing their DNA, geneticists estimated when these two lice populations split apart evolutionarily. That split gives us a rough date for when clothing itself must have first appeared, because body lice couldn't have evolved into a distinct species until clothing existed for them to live in. The estimate: somewhere around 170,000 years ago, give or take. Before regular clothing existed, early humans likely relied on fire, careful shelter placement, and simply avoiding the coldest environments altogether. These strategies worked well enough in moderate climates, but they sharply limited where humans could actually settle and survive long-term. The earliest form of clothing probably wasn't sewn at all. A single hide, draped loosely around the body, and held in place with simple ties or knots, offered basic warmth without any real fit. Crude, but a genuine first step beyond bare skin, unlike thick-coated animals that naturally grow denser fur for winter and shed it in summer. Hairless humans had no built-in seasonal adjustment at all. Clothing effectively became our substitute. For an evolutionary solution, our bodies never developed on their own. Turning a raw animal hide into something actually wearable required specialized tools. Stone scrapers, carefully shaped with a sharp working edge, were used to remove leftover flesh and fat from the underside of a fresh skin. A slow and essential first step. Once scraped clean, hides were worked and softened further, sometimes using animal brains or rendered fat rubbed into the material, a genuinely effective ancient tanning method, remarkably similar in principle to some traditional techniques still used today. The real turning point came with the invention of the sewing needle, a small, carefully carved sliver of bone or ivory, painstakingly shaped and polished, with a tiny hole punched through one end. The oldest examples found so far date back at least 40,000 years. A needle meant clothing could finally be tailored, fitted, and layered to the body instead of simply draped over it, sealing out cold air far more effectively than a loose hanging hide ever realistically could. Sinew, carefully pulled and prepared from animal tendons, provided the thread for this new technology, strong, thin, and naturally suited to being drawn through the tiny eye of a bone needle. The practical difference was enormous. Properly fitted, layered clothing could trap body heat effectively enough to make survival possible in temperatures that would have been genuinely fatal. Wrapped in a loose, draped hide alone, this single invention carried massive consequences for the entire species. With reliable, effective clothing finally available, humans could push further into Ice Age Europe, deep into Siberia, and eventually across the frozen landscapes leading toward the Americas. Clothing wasn't only ever about temperature either. It protected skin from harsh sun exposure, biting insects, and the countless everyday scrapes, cuts, and injuries that came with a physically demanding daily existence. As clothing technology developed further, it started carrying meaning, well beyond pure function too, signaling group identity, social status, or a specific role within a community. Not entirely unlike the way clothing still works today. Small beads, ochre pigment residue, and tiny pierced shells found sewn directly into the remains of ancient garments. suggest clothing was being decorated fairly early on. Appearance and personal expression, it turns out, mattered to ancient humans too. Different environments naturally demanded different clothing solutions. Heavily layered, tightly fitted garments in brutal Arctic regions versus lighter, looser wraps in milder temperate zones, each shaped directly by local climate and available materials. Thousands of years later, humans took the underlying concept much further, learning to spin plant and animal fibers into thread and weave that thread into genuine cloth, a technology that would eventually replace animal hides almost everywhere on Earth. Remarkably, some direct physical evidence has survived after all. Tiny fragments of ancient woven flax fiber and even faint fabric impressions accidentally preserved in fired clay, giving archaeologists rare, genuine glimpses of clothing technology that should have vanished completely. From a genetic clue hidden inside lice DNA, to carved bone needles, sinew thread, and finally woven flax fibers. The story of clothing is really the story of humans engineering their way around a problem. Evolution simply never solved for us. We didn't grow a solution to the cold. We invented one, and it changed where humans could live forever.